Starting off this countdown, we have the blue leaks. In June of 2020, following the killing of George Floyd and the protests, Anonymous leaked hundreds of gigabytes of law enforcement files. It has been named the blue leaks. Over 269 gigabytes of data were taken from over 200 law enforcement agencies. This included emails, audio recordings, videos, and documents. In total, there were millions of files leaked. Some of the leaked documents show that the FBI was monitoring the social media accounts of protesters, and they were also alerting local law enforcement about anti-police messages. Other documents showed that the FBI was tracking Bitcoin donations to protest groups, as well as highlighted some scandals and police misconduct. In our 9th spot, we have Trump's dirty laundry, and I don't mean like literally his stinky socks and undies. In May of 2020, Anonymous came after Trump during his presidency. This happened when Trump threatened to deploy his military force against the protesters. But Anonymous was like, nah, honey, you aren't doing that, and said they had dirt on him. They said that they would publish his dirty laundry. A couple of days later, they published 169 emails that mentioned Trump one way or another. Now, most of the emails weren't even bad, but it was just a scare tactic to show Trump, like, hey, we're not bluffing, okay? We got dirt on you. More on this in my next point. Coming in at number 8, we have Trump's connection to Jeffrey Epstein. So like I said, Anonymous leaked some emails about Trump. Well, they also threatened to release information connecting Trump to Jeffrey Epstein. Now, Trump and Epstein have been photographed together on a number of occasions. Apparently, they also have hung out with each other too. Some believe that Trump was a part of Epstein's ring and also exploited young females. And Anonymous apparently has proof, including access to Epstein's address book and old court documents. Technically, I'm cheating with this point since they didn't leak this information, but they did expose that they have this information. In our 7th spot, we have the Brazilian government. In June of 2020, Anonymous released personal information on the Brazilian president and his family and cabinet. This caused a lot of chaos. The federal police and the Brazilian Congress began to investigate. In the end, it was revealed that the federal government used $2 million of the public's money to fund advertising on several websites. Most of the websites supported the president, which makes sense as to why they wanted to put money into them. Not only that, but Anonymous leaked a number of government officials' addresses, income, and other personal information. The personal addresses were a very serious issue because it puts them at risk for attacks. Moving on, at number 6, we have CSIS documents. So what I didn't know is that apparently Anonymous has some beef with the Canadian government. One of their first attacks leaked secrets about the foreign activities of the Canadian Secret Intelligence Service, aka the CSIS. It released information about the size of their network, what information they have access to, along with other sensitive government documents. The Canadian government has only admitted to having foreign stations in Washington, London, and Paris. But according to the documents leaked, they have over 25 foreign stations. And I quote, many of which are located in developing countries and/or unstable environments. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the secret federal document. In another attack against Canada, Anonymous leaked top secret documents outlining the redevelopment of Canada's key diplomatic centers in Britain, including selling, relocating, and refurbishing Canada's diplomatic buildings in London. Now, it's nothing groundbreaking, but it's the fact that they got a hold of these top secret documents that's concerning. The documents were marked as confidence of the Queen's Privy Council, which basically means that it's top secret and private documents. Therefore, the government of Canada is looking into its own people to see if someone among them is leaking these documents to Anonymous, or maybe they're a part of Anonymous. In our 4th spot, we have the #OpsWakeUp21. In January of 2021, Anonymous attacked the government of Malaysia. They defaced 17 government and university websites. This was part of their campaign called #OpsWakeUp21. Basically, the purpose of this campaign was to highlight the poor security of the government's websites and to warn people about it. In a post, they said, and I quote, "Greetings, we are Anonymous Malaysia. This is message to Government Malaysia. Your security system is low. All data may be leaked. This can cause unwanted hackers selling all your information. Basically, they accuse the government for keeping silent and covering up a number of data breaches that occurred over the years. The government knew that personal information of their citizens was being obtained and sold, and they just kinda covered it up until Anonymous exposed them. Coming in at number 3, we have Anonymous Malaysia Part 2. During the Anonymous Malaysia attack, they also revealed that Facebook was selling private information to government agencies. In a post, Anonymous said, and I quote, "If you're a hacktivist willing to, or a man who just wants to protect his freedom of information and join the cause, and kill Facebook for your own privacy. Facebook has sold information to government agencies and gave secret access to information security firms so they can spy on people from around the world. You can't hide from reality where you are. You're neither safe from any government. Someday you'll look back on this and realize what we've done here is right. You'll thank the internet government. We will not harm you, but we will save you." Okay guys, it is time to deactivate Facebook. Nice. Coming in at number 2, we have Epic. In September of 2021, Anonymous leaked data from Epic, which is basically a domain registrar and a web hosting company that has provided service to websites that publish neo-Nazi and extremist content. It's a pretty controversial platform, and Anonymous leaked details of every domain that was ever hosted or registered through them. It also leaked a number of personal information of their customers, like their purchase records, emails, invoices, and credit card information. Over 15 million email addresses were exposed. In fact, they released 3 rounds of data on their website. The first was in February of 2021, the second in September, and the third in October. In October, they actually leaked information on documents belonging to the Texas Republican Party. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the NSA. So thanks to Edward Snowden, we all know that the NSA was spying on Americans through their phone records. Well, Anonymous just exposed the existence of a secret NSA and FBI program called PRISM. This program allows the NSA and FBI to take photos, videos, emails, and chats from the servers of 9 different internet companies, including Microsoft, Facebook, Google, and Apple. Anonymous leaked 13 huge documents about this program, and it revealed that the NSA is not only spying on Americans, but also citizens of over 35 different countries as well. Anonymous said, and I quote, "We bring this to you so that you know just how little rights you have. Your privacy and freedoms are slowly being taken away from you in closed-doors meetings, in laws buried in bills, and by people who are supposed to be protecting you."
In our number 10 spot, we have the Demonic Particle Accelerator. It seems that Elon is trying to cast CERN's Large Hadron Collider, aka the Particle Accelerator, in a bad light. Via Twitter, through a meme, Elon called it demonic. What the heck about it could be demonic? This is honestly fascinating, as us, regular folk would just assume that it's just a scientific tool. The tweet read, "Please let me use the CERN Large Hadron Collider. I am normal and I can be trusted with a demonic technology unlike anything the world has ever seen." Does this machine have some kind of darker purpose that perhaps the rest of the world may not be privy to? Do tell, Elon. Do tell. In our number 9 spot, we have the government tax agenda. In a tweet that Elon made on August 11th, 2022, he pointed out perhaps yet another government secret. The US government has been talking about decreasing taxes and making that a focus for Americans. And yes, most recently, on the taxpayer's dollar, the government hired 87,000 new IRS agents, aka the Internal Revenue Service Agency. Is this a dark secret that Elon just brought light to? Is the government saying one thing and doing the other? Possibly. Along with the tweet, Elon said, "Fate," heart emoji, irony. In our number 8 spot, we have the depopulation agenda. In an interview with the Nelk Boys on the Full Send podcast, Elon spoke about how our population is declining even though we're being told otherwise. He said that we've been pushing the movement of the side hustle boss onto all females and males, and so they want to wait to have children. And then some just don't want to have kids at all, and as a result, the population is decreasing. He went on to explain that the way that you can measure if the population is decreasing increasing or not is the ratio of adult depends to diapers. If there's more depends than diapers, then it's because people aren't having a lot of babies. I thought this to be very, very interesting as I sat for a moment and thought about all the people that I know that don't want kids, and also all the people that I know that are in their 30s and don't feel anywhere ready. Perhaps we will see the results of this in years to come. In our number 7 spot, we have the government on Twitter. In a series of many tweets, Elon has been peeling back the layers of Twitter and seemingly trying to expose it as a government-orchestrated ruse. From the moment Elon announced that he was going to buy Twitter, people suspected that, he had an agenda, whether it was to implement better free speech policies within the company, or whether to expose that the company is actually being used by people and not just bots that have been programmed to push an agenda. In a most recent tweet, Elon posted an article about a former federal law enforcement and intelligence operations, Dan Woods, who claims that 80% of Twitter users are probably bots. Knowing this information, of course, makes it more likely that the government is using it for their agenda. Honestly though, this one doesn't surprise me if true. How many people do you know that still uses Twitter and actually tweets? I know 0. That to me says a lot. Would love to know your thoughts though in the comment section below. In our number 6 spot, we have Who Are You Trolling? In a tweet from August 1st, Elon shared a meme that stated, "A smart man bases his political beliefs on his thoughts. A wise one changes them depending upon who they are trolling." This is a very interesting message that some think seemingly stems from the same message as George Orwell's book 1984. It's a commentary on the fact that if you feel angry towards anyone in politics, then know that this anger comes from influence in some way and you have been influenced. You will never actually know the truth, only what you're told. This is a darker government secret that people believe that Musk is trying to expose, that perhaps it is wise to not feel any sort of emotion and stay neutral to the stories that you are being told. And if you begin to lean any one way, question your anger, and in the case of this tweet, question your trolling and where it came from. In our number 5 spot, we have no aliens. In the Full Send podcast interview, Elon recently said, "If the universe is really 13.8 billion years old, shouldn't there be aliens everywhere? If not, why not?" Carl Sagan said there's either a lot of aliens or no aliens, and either one is equally terrifying. If there are no aliens, then what we have here is very rare. Some people believe that perhaps he was revealing here that human beings are unique, and perhaps the government doesn't want us to realize this, as then we would see life as way more of a precious thing. Perhaps if the world did think that humans were unique, then we would see our life as precious and, eat well, take care of ourselves, and try to be happy, and that certainly wouldn't be good for any business that benefits from people getting sick and hating life and the world. In our number 4 spot, we have Area 51. On the Full Send podcast, Elon revealed that Area 51 is not as what people believe it to be. He definitely hinted at the goings-on within the secret place, but he made it seem less supernatural and dark as the internet has made it seem. But then of course some people online think that he would say that because perhaps he's in cahoots with them, and they want to get the world off their trail, and so they have had him speak about it as if it's nothing special. He did reveal that the government and the people of Area 51 have invented weapons that the public haven't heard of and thought of yet. So perhaps, depending on how you interpret that, these weapons could be intended for some dark use, but the very purpose of a weapon is not positive, so of course. In our number 3 spot, we have government hypocrisy. Recently, you may have heard about the fact that the USA still has many people in jail that were put in there because of heed, minus the H and throw a W in front. Are you with me? Heed. Don't want this video to get dinged. Anyways, there is a lot of people still in jail for this drug, and a lot of people find it crazy that this could be the case, as throughout the country it has now been legalized. But recently the US government traded a Russian war criminal with Russia to free the women's basketball player who was imprisoned there for this very substance. It feels a little hypocritical, I don't know. On Twitter, Elon said this, "Maybe free some people in jail for heed here too," and then posted this meme of a man not looking too pleased with his hands on his hips, and the meme said, "People in the US in jail for heed, while the government trades a Russian war criminal to free a women's basketball player in jail for heed." Is Elon pointing out the hypocrisy in this action and hinting at a weird dark secret agenda that the government might be hiding? Possibly. In our number 2 spot, we have the NPCs. Again, in the Full Send interview with the Nelk Boys, Elon speaks about how everyone in the corporate world are like NPCs. He said, quote, "Are you even real? How do we know that you're not an NPC?" This had the internet in a frenzy as they contemplated, is Elon pointing out the fact that people in the corporate and political world are possibly NPCs? Is this his subtle way of telling everyone? I mean, he has been trying to get viewers to see that a large part of Twitter is just bots, so there's that. Is this a stretch? Could we be living amongst NPCs? In our number 1 spot, we have the Epstein list. Jeffrey Epstein is a former business financier who died in prison by supposedly taking his own life in 2019 while awaiting trial on federal trafficking charges. Jeffrey was known as somewhat of a celeb amongst the Hollywood elite, and he is seen in many pictures with many celebs over many decades. Since his arrest, the public have wondered who out of his Hollywood friends were involved in this scandal, as he obviously didn't do it alone. From Bill Clinton to Prince Andrew, there have been many names that have flown on Jeffrey's private jet to his island where everything was said to have taken place. After the most recent trial with Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey's accomplice, who was also convicted, an apparent list of celebrities that were involved was given to the court but not released to the public. Elon took to Twitter to comment on this. He uploaded a picture of a meme that said, "Things I'll never see in my life," with photos of a dragon, dinosaurs, and a unicorn, and the words, "the Epstein/Maxwell client list." He then went on to say, "Only thing more remarkable than the DOJ, the Department of Justice, not leaking the list is that no one in the media cares. Doesn't that seem odd?" He then added, "Sometimes I think my list of enemies is too short." So, insinuating that he will most likely make more enemies after this tweet. Many people believe that he was insinuating that there are people in the government, the Department of Justice, and the media on the list, and that is what Elon is trying to get the public to see. It would certainly make sense as to why the media is not reporting about it.
Starting off this countdown, we have the NSA spy hubs. We all know that the NSA is spying on us, okay? That's old news. I mean, in 2013, former contractor for the CIA, Edward Snowden, revealed that the NSA was collecting phone records of millions of Americans and spying on us through our phone calls. Well, it turns out they have multiple top secret bases. Half of them, we don't even know where they're located. We just know that they're out there. Somewhere. These spy hubs are often windowless skyscrapers. There are some in Atlanta, Dallas, Chicago, Los Angeles, New York City, San Francisco, Seattle, and of course, Washington, D.C. These buildings, though, aren't regular buildings. No, of course not. They are highly secure and guarded. In fact, they are built to withstand terrorist attacks, nuclear attacks, and natural disasters. So not only do we not know where they're located, we don't know what they're doing in all of these hubs, besides spying on American citizens. So you better behave. They're watching. Always watching. Moving on to number 9, we have Diego Garcia, and if you guys are liking this video so far, then make sure to give it a big thumbs up because it really helps us out. Diego Garcia is a US occupied small island in the Indian Ocean. Technically, it's an overseas territory of Great Britain. In 1966, the people on the island were employed as contract farmers. They were working on coconut plantations. But from 1968 to 1973, the farm workers were kicked off the island by the UK government, so that the US/UK military could have a joint base on the island. So in 1966, the United States was given the rights to use the island if they forgot about the $14 million debt that the UK owed them. Now the island is used by government officials and it's highly guarded. In fact, rumor has it that the island is home to a secret prison. Rumor also has it that the Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 that went missing without a trace actually just landed on this island. Not only that, but apparently rumor has it that this base is used by the CIA to torture prisoners. There's some crazy theories out there. I hope one day we'll find out if any of them are true. Then in 2009, the US military evicted several thousand of the island's local residents. Why they did this is still so top secret. Like, they don't know why they got evicted. I really wish we knew. Something fishy is going on over there. Coming in at number 8, we have the Dugway Proving Ground. Located in Utah, the Dugway Proving Ground is the main biological and chemical weapons testing site for the US Army. Like, who knows how many and what kinds of dark deadly weapons they are building and testing there. The base also contains top secret US military research documents, which is one of the reasons why the government doesn't want you to know about it. Now, in 1968, the unbelievable happened at the base. On March 13th, a high-speed jet sprayed 320 gallons of nerve gas VX around the air in a test. This is so deadly that 10 milligrams can kill people. It'll stop your respiratory muscles from working and then you'll just choke to death. Anyways, it sprayed in an area near a farm. The next day, thousands of sheep were found dead. The government denied that this was their fault, but people aren't buying it. Either way, they paid the rancher who lost a sheep over $300,000 and tried to keep this situation hush-hush. So the government definitely doesn't want us to know any of that, but I know it, and I shared it with you. Moving on to number 7, we have Camp Perry. Camp Perry, otherwise called The Farm, is a top secret training facility run by the CIA. The place is used to train CIA officers as well as officers working in the Defense Intelligence Agency. One of the reasons why this place is so secretive is because they don't want the identity of their top secret agents to be leaked. Because then, hello, they wouldn't be secret agents anymore, would they? Now, listen to just how intense this camp is. So former CIA officer Bill Wagner went to a 3-week interrogation course at the farm in 1970. He revealed that the people learning to be good interrogators practiced techniques such as sleep deprivation, mock execution, and would deliberately taint food, which exposes that CIA interrogators use these techniques in real life. Of course, the US government has never formally acknowledged the existence of this camp, although many people know that it's real. Coming in at number 6, we have Area 51. Of course, I had to put this one on the list. Hello, everyone wants to know what the heck is going on at that top secret base. Like, are the rumors true? Do they really have animals hiding there? Are they conducting unethical tests on humans? Area 51 is home to a number of conspiracy theories because it's so highly protected and secretive. Seriously, people have gotten killed for trying to even get close to the building. This has led a lot of people to believe that the military is up to something. What do you think goes on in Area 51? Let me know in the comments below. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Sherman Kent School for Intelligence Analysis. This is a training school in Reston, Virginia for CIA analysts. The school has been given the nickname The Vault because of how many locks and alarms and guards it has. So basically, the school opened in May of 2000 and it apparently teaches members many important things, such as foreign languages, regional studies, satellite image analysis, wiretap transcript analysis, and media report analysis. So basically everything you think a spy would need to know. This place is basically spy school, which is super cool. Now, like all places on this list, this one is also heavily guarded. It is located on the 2nd floor of a 5-story structure. The glass windows are smoked to prevent people from looking in and spying. The building also contains sensors to prevent eavesdropping from outside. And like I said, it's protected by a number of locks and alarms and surveillance. In our 4th spot, we have Menwith Hill. Menwith Hill is a Royal Air Force base located in the UK. In fact, it is said to be one of the most secretive places in the UK. First off, the place is super odd. Like, there's a bunch of white domes all over the place that look like giant golf balls. Like, I feel like it's just the government's own mini putt or golfing range or something like that, but it's not. This site is said to be the largest electronic monitoring system on the planet. So basically, it's a place where they spy on us, monitoring our every move. The site first opened to spy on the Soviet Union during the Cold War. Since then, we don't know exactly what they're spying on, but it's a vital part of the NSA surveillance network. In 2012, it was believed that the base was involved in a number of drone attacks. However, this has never been confirmed. On top of that, it was revealed that the NSA used the base to, and I quote, aid a significant number of capture-kill operations. That is terrifying, wow. Moving on to number 3, we have Kapustin Yar. Kapustin Yar is basically Russians' version of Area 51. It is a top secret base created by the USSR. It was used for developing the Soviet space program. But now, rumor has it that it is home to aliens. Apparently, people saw a large red sphere flying in the sky right above this base. Others claim to have seen three-eyed aliens wearing silver overalls there. I mean, hey, at least he's stylish. In fact, most alien sightings in Russia occur near this top secret base. Coincidence? I think not. It could be that aliens are trying to escape from this base or something like that. There's even rumors of this base being used to conduct alien autopsies. It's pretty creepy. I don't even want to know if I want to find out what goes on in there. In our second spot, we have the secret super command bunker. Apparently, the Pentagon is planning to build a secret command bunker 3,500 feet under Washington, D.C. What's the purpose of this bunker, you ask? Well, just in case of nuclear war, the bunker will keep people safe from the nukes. Apparently, the pandemic shook the US government and now they, and I quote, put plans in place to ensure critical elements of the US government can keep functioning in the midst of an extreme crisis. So they're basically gonna be like, sick, every man for themselves, peace out, and then just disappear into this secret bunker. And in our number one spot, we have Porton Down. Close to Stonehenge, there's a place called Porton Down, which is basically a massive experimental testing center. It's known for working on chemical and biological weapons, as well as dealing with dangerous pathogens. The stuff that goes on in there is dark, and I mean dark. Starting in 1945, the government began testing nerve gas on real humans. These testings on humans went until 1989. In the end, more than 3,400 people had nerve gas tested on them. In 1953, a man named Ronald Madison died after being subjected to liquid nerve gas. Not only did they lie and say they were no longer testing the gas on humans, but they denied that the nerve gas was the cause of his death. Recently, however, it was discovered that they are now testing this gas and other dangerous weapons on animals. What else goes on in there is unknown. Like, what if they're still running unethical tests on humans? It's crazy. Starting off this countdown, we have the spies. Tons of people are afraid that the government is spying on them. It's thought that they can tap into our phones and watch us and listen to our calls, even though I don't know why they would want to. Like, what are they gonna see me scrolling through like Instagram all day? It's not a pretty sight. Now, we can't really prove that they do, but recently a post on Reddit revealed that they are tracking us. So I don't know if this is a thing outside of Canada, but it is in Canada. So Apple and Android phones now have a COVID-19 sensor on them. Basically, this allows the government to track your every move. A couple of weeks ago, a lot of cell phone users were having phone disruptions, and that's apparently when the tracker was put on the phones. In secret. But it's not on all phones. Once you update your phone, then it's automatically turned on. Don't believe me? Well, the post says that for iPhone users, go to Settings, Privacy, Health, and then you'll see it, but it's not yet functional. For Android users, go to Settings, then Google Settings, and it should be there. This is said to be able to notify you if you've been near someone that has the virus. But it's also a way for the government to track your every move. Seriously, why would they have this feature and then just like not tell us about it? Why is everything done in secrecy? They're up to something. Moving on at number 9, we have Nixon's health. Now, this isn't really classified information, but I thought it was quite interesting, and it was brought to my attention by Kelly, Roy on Reddit. So the files of Richard Nixon's longtime physician, Dr. Walter Tkach, probably said that last name wrong, are on lockdown. The doctor's son has the files and is planning to eventually release them to the Nixon library, but when he does, they will not be open for 75 years. Not only that, but taped conversations between Nixon and his doctor are also on lockdown, and they will not be released. Now, why is this significant? Well, some people believe that Nixon was incapacitated towards the end of his presidency. If so, then under the 25th Amendment, he should have had his authority suspended. So there's a reason why the government has been keeping these files classified. It's going to apparently expose a lot. In our 8th spot, we have the trade documents. Back in 2019, the Reddit account OsterMaxNN leaked a bunch of UK government trade documents. The documents discussed future trade deals between the US and the UK. They also revealed plans by the Conservative Party to privatize National Health Service. After investigation, it turns out that the Reddit user that leaked the documents was part of a larger coordinated effort from Russia. Reddit said, and I quote, "We investigated this account and the accounts connected to it. And today we believe this was part of a campaign that has been reported as originating from Russia." In our 7th spot, we have Area 51. Everyone wants to know what really goes on in Area 51. Is it really where they're keeping aliens? I need to know. But sadly, we don't truly know. But we do have some insider information on what it's like in Area 51. Yeah, you heard me. 8 years ago, a Reddit user by the name of Kiver16 revealed that his mother's boyfriend is Stephen Gorvan, aka one of the people who was at Area 51 testing the Mars rover. He uploaded a picture of Stephen holding a sign saying, "Hi Reddit, ask me anything," as proof that it actually was him and he wasn't just gonna make it up. So people quickly jumped to it, asking him tons of questions on the mysterious base. During one part of the Q&A, Stephen revealed that when he first arrived at the base, he saw a strange aircraft flying low across the desert floor. He believed that it was a test flight for a secret aircraft. He said it moved at subsonic speed and didn't make a lot of noise. He also revealed that Area 51 is much bigger than it looks, with tons of different sectors and buildings. Now sadly, he didn't see any aliens. But he did reveal that it seemed like we are close to hoverboard technology, like the ones you see in Back to the Future, so that's pretty cool. Moving on to number 6, we have D.B. Cooper. One of the most famous and mysterious cases of all times, and I might have found out what happened to him. But first, let me give a rundown on this dude for the people who have no clue what I'm talking about. Dan Cooper, or D.B. Cooper, is a man who was responsible for a plane hijacking in 1971. No one knows who he is or where he is now. So in 1971, Cooper boarded the plane, and once in the air, he handed the flight attendant a note saying that he had a bomb in his suitcase. He demanded $200,000 and a parachute, but he didn't want any hostages. So they landed in Seattle, he got his request, and then he told the pilot to fly to Mexico City. However, along the way, he took the money and his parachute and jumped out of the plane. The police looked for Cooper until 2016, and this case is known as one of the longest active searches in history. Now, 2 years ago, a former FBI special agent joined Reddit and did a AMA, Ask Me Anything. To prove it was really him, he held a piece of paper like the other dude, saying his name and his Reddit, blah blah blah. The man is Mark Ruskin, who worked 20 years in undercover operations. One of the questions that someone asked him was about D.B. Cooper, and what the FBI thought happened to him and what he thought happened to him. Ready for this? Both the FBI and Mark believe that D.B. Cooper did not survive the parachute down. I know, so anticlimactic, but apparently they have evidence to suggest he didn't make it. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the cat bomb. So this secret isn't really a secret anymore. I guess most of these aren't secrets anymore, but I didn't know this was a thing until I read about it on Reddit, meaning that I bet some of you haven't heard about it either. So during World War II, the government thought it would be a good idea to strap a cat to a bomb. They thought that by doing so, it would assure the bombs would reach their target. Cats hate water, so they thought if you drop a cat strapped to a bomb over water, the cat would avoid the water and then would just land on the battleship's deck. But obviously, for many reasons, that did not work out. Cats would end up passing out midair before sinking without a trace. They also tried something similar with bats, which again, didn't really work. Moving on to number 4, we have the bomb shelter. This is going to come to a shock to anyone who lives outside of the US. Posted on Reddit by the user Deadpool8988, they said that at one point, the US government was telling people to build a bomb shelter in their backyards. They instructed people to dig a big enough hole in their backyard and then cover it with a door. They were told to hide out there in case of a nuclear attack. But turns out, that the real reason why they were telling families to do this was so that if there was a nuclear attack, the government wouldn't have to bury as many bodies. So families were literally digging their own graves. That is extremely disturbing. In our third spot, we have the blood supply. Okay, this one is going to be pretty crazy. So back in 1984, the Red Cross Society in Canada was importing blood products from the US. This was at the time of the AIDS crisis, and America was hit much harder with it. There was fear that the disease was going to be transmitted through this blood. But the Red Cross ignored it, and according to this Reddit user who was a lab worker for the American Red Cross, apparently they were aware of this and so was the US government. But they didn't warn Canadians. Instead, they told them they had nothing to worry about and that they tested the blood before sending it. The guy was forced to keep his mouth shut and lie. As a result, tons of hemophiliacs who had blood transfusions later died of AIDS. What's freaky is that the Reddit user that shared this information later deleted his account. I just hope that he's safe and that the government didn't come for him for exposing them. In our second spot, we have the leaked emails. In March 2016, the personal Gmail account of John Podesta, a former White House chief of staff and chair of Hillary Clinton's 2016 US presidential campaign, was hacked, and his emails revealed some very disturbing things. So the emails were posted to Reddit along with other websites, and then users started to decipher them. They believe that Hillary and other people of power are part of a human and a sex ring. In the emails, they use code words like pizza, cheese pizza, and hot dogs. Kinda weird. And it would say things like, and I quote, "I'm dreaming about your hot dog stand in Hawaii." Clearly, there's a hidden message to that. I can't dive into too much detail about it for obvious reasons, but you should do some research of your own. It's crazy. What makes this more suspicious is that the government removed all posts about this from Reddit, Facebook, Twitter, and other social media sites. Any posts about the emails and the theories will be removed. And in our number one spot, we have the blue van. Okay, this one thoroughly creeps me out. Like, it just proves that the government is up to no good. So this story was posted on Reddit by a former homicide detective. One time he was called to a scene where the victim had called 911 saying that someone was trying to kill him. He told police that he was hiding in his panic room. When they arrived at his house, there were no signs of forced entry, and all the doors remained locked from the inside. Inside the house, there was no damage, it was just super clean, no signs of violence or anything. Due to this, the detective believed that the attacker was someone that the man knew and invited inside. When they eventually got to the panic room, they found the man sitting on the floor. His face had a terrified expression plastered on it. Both of his arms were missing, not cut off. They looked as if they had been ripped off. His missing limbs were never found. Now, here's where it gets spooky. As soon as they reported their findings, the police captain told the team to give all of the evidence, along with the victim's body, to the individuals in a blue van that had arrived on the scene. The blue van belonged to the government. After they did this, the case was buried. They never heard any more information on it. Like, what? Seems like some government creature got released and killed this guy or something like that, and then they're trying to cover it up. Starting off this countdown, we have the Vipholm experiments. This was a series of experiments in Sweden from 1945 to 1955. It's literally going to make you sick to your stomach when you find out what they did. Basically, they force-fed people with mental illness sweets to see if sugar was related to tooth decay. Imagine people just cramming food down your throat against your will. It's very gross. These experiments were conducted by the government and sponsored by the sugar industry. The experiments lasted for about 2 years, and by then the teeth of about 50 of the subjects in the experiment had been completely ruined. In our ninth spot, we had the UK Special Demonstration Squad. This is the name of a group of undercover police officers in the UK. Now, the things that they did are going to shock you. For example, they would steal birth certificates and identities of people that had died at a young age. They'd make sure that they would be around their age and then use their identities. The younger the person died, the better, because that means they didn't already live a life that they would have to cover up. And then they would go around with this new identity. Some cases they actually got into relationships with women, but the whole time they did so just to spy on them. In November of 2015, the Metropolitan Police Force apologized to 7 women tricked into relationships by these officers. Like, imagine that, dating someone you're madly in love with, sometimes even having a kid with them, only for them to be like, oh, sorry, gotta go, was only dating you to get intel on you and your friend circle. It's disgusting, and it's actually happened to multiple women. In our 8th spot, we have the radioactive waste. Apparently, there's a huge radioactive dumping zone located in Tonawanda, New York. In fact, they dumped more than 37 million gallons of radioactive waste from their World War II atomic bomb tests. This area has a high rate of cancer and thyroid conditions, and this is the reason why, and no one's talking about it. In our 7th spot, we have the hepatitis tests. In 1956, the US government began running tests on young individuals living at the Willowbrook State School in Staten Island. This was a state-supported institution for children with intellectual disabilities. And what they did to these students was give them hepatitis in order to track the development of the viral infection. Of course, they were being experimented on without knowledge or consent. To make matters worse, the study lasted 14 years. They also injected them with a number of drugs to see what they would do to their body and the hepatitis. Imagine intentionally making a group of people sick for an experiment. The grossest part is that when the government was exposed for this project, they tried to justify their actions by saying that these people were probably gonna wind up contracting it anyways. In our 6th spot today, we have Operation Popeye. This is another very wild one. Operation Popeye was a highly classified weather modification program during the Vietnam War from 1967 to 1972. You heard me correctly. The government learned how to control the weather. Basically, they wanted to increase rainfall in certain areas to prevent enemies and military supply trucks from being able to travel. In fact, they caused a number of landslides and flooding in that area. Weather manipulation has since been banned from use for military gain. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with HIV. In the 1980s, the HIV epidemic broke out. No one knew how it spread, they just knew that it should be feared, and tons of LGBTQ+ community members were sadly contracting the virus. Well, rumor has it that HIV was a government experiment that was meant to wipe out the undesirables. Of course, the US government has denied this claim, and it's just a conspiracy, we don't know for sure. But based on the other experiments done on minority groups, it's hard to know what to believe. In our 4th spot today, we have Project 112 and Project SHAD, or SHAD. Project 112 and Project SHAD took place from 1962 to 1973 and involved a number of veterans or military personnel. Basically, both tests involved exposing these people to substances they might want to use in warfare. Nearly 6,000 people were exposed to Coxiella burnetii, which is Q fever, Staphylococcal enterotoxin B, which causes food poisoning, and sarin and soman gas. Sarin is a very, very dangerous nerve gas, and soman can cause death in minutes. Both can be fatal if only the tiniest amount gets on the skin. These men had no clue that they were being exposed to this. Moving on to number 3, we have Project Sunshine. This is another very messed up government project. During the 1950s, the US government was using stillborns to conduct radiation tests on. They wanted to determine the effects that radiation would have on humans and how much we could withstand in case of a nuclear fallout. They called this Project Sunshine, and it was anything but rainbows and sunshine. What's sad is that the government was stealing body parts and tissues from morgues without families' consent. It's said that more than 1,500 samples were gathered worldwide. This is incredibly sad and sick. Coming in at number 2, we have the syphilis experiments. In 1932, the US Public Health Service created an experiment to see the health effects of untreated syphilis. But the test subjects were told that they were receiving free treatment to cure their syphilis. And that was a lie. Instead of giving the men the recommended penicillin treatment, they gave them placebos, like aspirin. Sadly, 28 men died of syphilis because of these experiments, 100 more passed away from syphilis-related complications, and 40 spouses contracted this disease. And 19 women who gave birth passed on syphilis to their newborn children. In 1997, Bill Clinton apologized to the survivors and their families on behalf of the government. And he admitted that the tests were, and I quote, profoundly and morally wrong. And in our number one spot today, we have the radiation tests. In 1953, a number of tests were done on pregnant women to see the effects that radioactive iodine would have on them and their newborns. These studies were terrible. In one study, researchers gave these women doses of iodine 131. Sadly, they all miscarried. When they did, they continued to study the women's aborted embryos. Another study took place after World War II. 829 pregnant mothers in Tennessee were given vitamin drinks. They were informed that these drinks would improve their health and their babies. But it actually contained radioactive iron, and the researchers wanted to see how fast the radioisotopes crossed into the placenta. Several of the young passed away from these experiments. 4 died from cancers as a result of the experiments, and the women experienced rashes, bruises, anemia, hair and tooth loss, and cancer as well. Meanwhile, they just wanted the best for their babies and thought that this drink was going to help them, not kill them.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have interception. To start off this list today, let's talk about one of the very first electronic interceptions because, to be honest, this was happening sooner than I would have thought, but in a very different way than what we're used to now. Let's set the stage and take it back to the beginning of the 1900s, the first year of the new century. We were in the midst of the Boer War, which lasted from 1899 until 1902. Prior to this war, the British Royal Navy had installed wireless sets that had been produced by Marconi onto their ships. This allowed the British Army to be able to use some limited wireless signaling and communication. During the war, however, nearing the end, things took a bit of a turn. While the British had captured and were holding cities and towns, there were still many dispersed Boer commandos who were out there and were taking to different tactics. They began a guerrilla war, and part of that was by intercepting telegraph messages. Not only did they intercept important messages, but they were even able to capture some of the sets to be able to use them themselves. In our number 9 spot today, we have mobilization. The Russo-Japanese War is one that lasted for a little over a year, spanning from 1904 to 1905. While the war was mainly between Russia and Japan, the signal interception I want to talk about today came from a British ship. As the Russian fleet was preparing for conflict with Japan in 1904, a British ship called the HMS Diana was stationed in the Suez Canal. This canal is located in Egypt and it connects the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea. While stationed here, the HMS Diana ended up intercepting Russian naval wireless signals that were being sent out. These signals were apparently intended to signal for the mobilization of the fleet. In our number 8 spot today, we have the BBC. So for this one, we have to be on the same page for what a numbers station is. Basically, they're shortwave radio stations, and the transmissions or broadcasts are usually certain numbers or other repetitive things which are believed to be aimed to address intelligence officers who are operating in foreign countries. So for this one, we are taking it back to 1983 when the BBC, yes, the British Broadcasting Corporation, received a letter from a listener they had in Andorra. This listener had written into the World Service Waveguide program to complain that during her attempt at listening, she was interrupted by a female voice that was reading out numbers in English, and she wanted to know what this interference was. While the corporation gave a regular, non-sinister answer to the confused woman, after more research was done into the case, people aren't quite convinced. Many people who know much more about these things and recognize the patterns seen in number stations are fairly certain that this interruption was a numbers station that was being broadcast on a random frequency that just happened to intercept with this woman's BBC program. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Duga radar. So for this one, we are talking about a huge missile defense radio structure called Duga 3. This structure is suspected of having been wildly over budget, and it was the source of many, many complaints after it was built. The systems were extremely powerful and broadcast in short-wave radio bands. They would appear without warning and sounded like a sharp, repetitive tapping noise, and they would disrupt things like legitimate broadcasts, amateur radio, commercial aviation communications, and utility transmissions, which all led to there being international complaints, and at the time, people didn't know what it was. This led people to think that this signal was actually being used for things such as Soviet mind control or weather control experiments. In our number 6 spot today, we have World War I. For this one, we are taking it back to the First World War and discussing something that really changed the way we use wireless communications. Basically, during the First World War, British forces were able to intercept German radio communications. With this newfound ability, they were able to learn about the plans that German forces had and used this to their advantage. Of course, later when this was found out, no one wanted a similar thing to happen to them, but the technology was so valuable they couldn't just give up on it. This is said to be what led to the use of cryptography, which was intended to conceal the messages being sent out, and thus cryptoanalysis, which originated to get around this new extra layer of protection, was born. In our number 5 spot today, we have Cobra Mist. This is the code name that was used to describe the experimental over-the-horizon radar that ended up being stationed at Orford Ness, England. It was originally supposed to be stationed in Turkey, where it could cover most of the European Soviet airspace, but Turkey had some objections and weren't all that pleased with the idea. This led to the site being moved to the UK, where it offers a view of most of Eastern Europe. The system was built through the 1960s and into the 1970s, so you think it would have been this amazing success, but things went more than a little awry when it was first turned on. When switched on, it began having these noise problems, and despite best efforts, no one could figure out where these problems were coming from, which led to the project being shut down in 1973. In our number 4 spot today, we have UVB-76. This sound apparently began to happen in the 1980s when a radio tower just north of Moscow began transmitting a random and seemingly bizarre assortment of beeps, but in 1992 the sound began to change. In that year it suddenly switched to a buzzing sort of sound that would last about a second, and this sound would occur somewhere between 21 to 34 times every minute. This strange routine would be interrupted once every few weeks by a male voice, which would then be reciting a string of numbers and words, mostly Russian sounding names like Anna and Nikolai. The buzzing wasn't necessarily always exactly the same, as the tone would switch and there would be different intervals between the buzzes, but one thing that was always consistent is that every hour on the hour, the station would have 2 quick consecutive buzzes. To make things stranger, in June of 2010 and also in August of that year, the station briefly stopped sending out signals, despite it having been constantly for years and years. At the end of August in 2010, the station again changed and there began to be different shuffling sounds and thuds that could be heard in the background, and often little snippets of the Dance of the Little Swans from Swan Lake would also interrupt the broadcast. While we obviously know that these sounds are coming from a radio broadcast and we can make out what some of the sounds we're hearing are, we have absolutely no idea what purpose they serve, where they are coming from, or what they might mean. Right now the best guess is that these are secret messages that are being transmitted to secret agents. If that is the case, it's likely we might never know exactly what is being discussed in these broadcasts. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Lincolnshire Poacher. The Lincolnshire Poacher, which is a British numbers station, was being transmitted from Cyprus. It began transmitting in the middle of the 1960s and was in operation until quite recently in 2008. This station is believed to have been operated by the British Secret Intelligence Service, and the reason behind its name is because it is said that the station commonly used bars from the English folk song of the same name. There would often be a female voice heard reciting a group of 5 numbers, with the final number in the group being read in a higher pitched voice. It is believed that the station was meant to be communicating with undercover agents operating in the Middle East. Back in 2006, however, this broadcasting was interrupted by the North Korean Foreign Language Service, Voice of Korea. This language service began to broadcast on the same frequency as the Lincolnshire Poacher, which some believe may have been intentional. In our number 2 2 spot today we have Ana Montez. For this one, we're taking a bit of a turn and talking about someone who used secret signals and transmissions in order to spy on the US for Cuba. Ana Montez is a former American senior analyst at the Defense Intelligence Agency, and for 17 years she used encrypted messages to receive information and communicate with the Cuban government in order to spy on the United States. In the charging documents, American federal prosecutors said, quote, Montez communicated with the Cuban intelligence service through encrypted messages and received her instructions through shortwave encrypted transmissions from Cuba. In addition, Montez communicated by coded numeric pager messages with the Cuban intelligence service by public telephones located in the District of Columbia and Maryland. The codes included I received message or danger. Ana was arrested by the FBI at her office on September 21st, 2001, and part of the reason why is because she apparently had classified information on the US military's pending invasion of Afghanistan, and people were worried that she might go on to further reveal this information. While Ana pleaded guilty to her crimes, which could have carried a death sentence, she received 25 years and her tentative release date is January 8th, 2023. In our number 1 spot today we have Atención. This is a number station that ended up being the first to be officially and publicly accused of transmitting messages to spies. This station was the center of an espionage trial, and US prosecutors claimed that the station was sending numbered codes for the accused to write down using Sony handheld shortwave receivers and then decode using a computer program. This gave them their next instructions that were to be followed in their spying plans. During this trial, the FBI testified that they had entered one of the spies' apartments and copied the decryption code that was used for the messages sent from the station. Using this code, they were able to unveil the secret messages being sent out, which they read in court.
Number 10. Project Stargate. If you've watched Stranger Things, then this one probably sounds familiar to you. In the show, 11 started off as an experiment to psychically spy on the Russians, and turns out this was actually real. In the 1970s in California and later in Maryland, the CIA recruited numerous men and women who claimed they had ESP, or extrasensory perception. People with ESP typically say that they can read minds or move objects without touching them. They were recruited to try and help uncover military and domestic intelligence secrets. Mostly they just wanted them to spy on the Russians by reading their minds. The government covered it up, of course, because why would they want people knowing they're trying to use magic powers to win a war? But in 2017, when 12 million pages of records were declassified, all of the information about the so-called Project Stargate became public knowledge. People learning that they had been using the men and women to locate hostages and even track fugitives throughout the states. Number 9. Vault 7. Vault 7 was definitely never meant to make it to the public eye, but unfortunately for the CIA, it got leaked. So what actually is Vault 7? Back in 2017, WikiLeaks started releasing a series of CIA documents. Vault 7 was a group of documents that contained hacking systems that were either developed or otherwise obtained by the CIA. For the most part, it should make you wary of your technology and how the government is using it. Many people know that apps will track our searches and data to learn about us and maybe even sell it to malicious companies, but it's much more than that. Weeping Angel has the ability to turn a Samsung television into a recording device, even if it appears that your television is switched off. Vault 7 also contained the ability to intercept all your iPhone messages before they got encrypted through apps like WhatsApp, Signal, and Telegram. And according to the documents, the CIA can allegedly take over your phone by exploiting vulnerabilities, but Apple has said that they patch these vulnerabilities as soon as they're aware of them. Number 8. Battalion 316. Intelligence Battalion 316 went through a few different names throughout its existence, but it was pretty much always functioning for the same reason. They were an army unit in Honduras that was responsible for carrying out political assassinations, and even kidnapping and causing pain to people who were seen as potential political competition throughout the 1980s. The group received both support and training from the CIA, even receiving their training at United States military bases. They were a military kill squad that definitely wasn't known for being friendly, committing various crimes like terrorism, terrorism, misogyny, ethnic cleansing, and even so-called crimes against humanity. Their goal to remain in power in Honduras failed, leaving behind a long list of innocent victims. In 1996, members of the US Congress asked President Bill Clinton to release the documentation about the country's involvement with the human rights violations that took place in Honduras, and this is when we learned about the battalion. Number 7. MKUltra. Let's once again return to the Red Scare and the United States fight against Russians and communism. During the Cold War, they came under the belief that the communists had invented a drug that would allow them to control human minds, and the US wanted a piece of that, starting their own research into the technique under the name Project MKUltra, trying to find their own mind control substance that could be turned into a weapon. It ran from the 50s to the 60s and led to many unknowing or even unwilling subjects being given illicit substances. The experiments were apparently covertly funded in American universities and research facilities, but it turns out that the experiments also took place in prisons and detention centers in the US, Japan, Germany, and the Philippines. The goal was to destroy the current mind and replace it with something new. Attempts included using electric shocks and illicit substances. For some, the experiments were fatal, and many others had their lives completely changed. Number 6. Operation Cyclone. Operation Cyclone became known as one of the longest and most expensive covert operations taken on by the CIA, costing around $630 million per year for a whole decade. So what was Operation Cyclone, and why was the government pouring so much cash into it? It was an operation that worked to arm and finance militant Islamic groups during the military intervention by the USSR. The goal was to aid anti-Soviet resistances outside of the United States. They gave loans, aircrafts, weapons, and other military assistance to the groups in Afghanistan, costing the United States government billions of dollars for these so-called care packages. Eventually, the Soviets were pushed out of Afghanistan, but conspiracy was still spinning. Many of the weapons ended up being sold in local markets instead of going to the rebels, and some people believe that Osama bin Laden and the Al-Qaeda received assistance from the US military. Number 5. Operation Ajax. In the 1950s, a coup took place in Iran, and the CIA documents about it weren't released until they were pressured to a total 64 years later. As it turns out, the agency played a large role in the coup that led to the end of the current Iranian prime minister, a rise in nationalism, and sour US-Iranian relationships remaining into the 21st century. The motivation was oil. The US and UK wanted Iran's oil, but their new prime minister made it inaccessible to them, so the two countries conspired to overthrow him and get their oil back. The coup seemed to fail, and the CIA sent a message to their base in Iran calling it off, but the CIA officer who received it said, "Nah, we're not done here." So the next day, with crowds allegedly hired by the CIA, the coup, or Operation Ajax, went through and the prime minister was overthrown, the monarchy and oil fields restored in the country, anti-Western sentiment also being restored and growing to new and extreme levels. Number 4. The Five Eyes. Are you familiar with one of the farthest reaching intelligence and espionage agencies in the world? You are probably a part of it and don't even know it. It is the once secret Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance. After World War II, the US and UK came together to create an information sharing alliance as a result of how important communication was for them during the war effort. And in 1956, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand were added to this group. The classification status on these documents was USA, UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, eyes only. And that was obviously a bit wordy, so they shortened it down to Five Eyes. It has been operating for 70 years now and is used for surveillance and sharing classified information between the 5 countries. The alliance was especially important during the Cold War, when the countries shared a lot of information like the location of Soviet weapons in North America. The alliance was kept a secret until documents of the original UK and USA agreement were released back in 2010. Number 3. Operation PB Success. Similarly to Operation Ajax, Operation PB Success was a covert CIA military operation that took place in another country, this time Guatemala. This was another coup that took place only a year after the one in Iran in 1954. At the time, Guatemala had a very new democracy, only being on their 2nd second democratically elected president, but the United States saw him as a threat, this being due to his allowance of the Guatemalan Communist Party to act freely and land reform movements that threatened US industries. The CIA then worked through various different plans of action to overthrow the Guatemalan government, including assassination and faking tensions between the country and Honduras. They spread false information, placed anonymous phone calls, and hired anti-communist students to create a fake opposition. Eventually, the president stepped down and their democracy was seen as unfavorable. The United States training that the Guatemalan military now had led to a war lasting decades, tearing apart the country. But PB's success was a success as it worked, and they were able to deny CIA involvement until the documents were released in 1997. Number 2. The Secret War. We're once again fighting communism, this time in Vietnam, but while the Vietnam War was taking place, a smaller secret war was taking place in Laos, attempting to stop communism from spreading to Southeast Asia. The Americans essentially used the countries of Laos and Cambodia to fight their own war against northern Vietnam and communism, using their tribes as their soldiers. While it was clear that the small armies had no hopes of truly winning against northern Vietnam, the United States and the CIA continued on with their fight, devastating the country and peoples of Laos and Cambodia. They came out of the war with their land and lives completely lost and changed, but the CIA wrote it down in their history books as a success, disregarding the country's sacrifice. The CIA's historical retrospective on the situation not being released until many years later. Number 1. Operation Condor. It's the Cold War again, and the United States government are fighting against terrorism, this time under the codename Operation Condor. It was a campaign of political repression and so-called state terror that was backed by the US and CIA. It involved many heinous activities like kidnapping, killings, political espionage, and much more, all taking place throughout South America. The CIA chose to describe it as a cooperative effort by the intelligence/security services of several South American countries to combat terrorism and subversion, but really it was a lot more than that. Condor's key members were Argentina, Chile, Uruguay, Paraguay, Bolivia, and later Brazil. The United States provided them with planning, coordination, technical support, and military training, all routed through the CIA. It led to many military dictatorships and numerous deaths throughout South America. And there is so much detail and information on this one that if you want it, you're just gonna have to look it up for yourself.
Kicking off the list at number 10, nuclear secrets. Today's technology, it's getting faster, it's getting better, it's getting harder, it's getting stronger, right? All the good stuff. I'm learning more from Wordle than I did in high school, okay? But how secure are these study apps? That's the million-dollar question. A year ago, we quickly saw how a flashcard app could expose nuclear secrets. Yeah, this is a big one. Nuclear bases around Europe are housing US troops, and while they're there studying, they're using online flashcard apps to remember complex security codes. Makes a lot of sense. They would use common sites such as Quizlet, Cram, CheckPrep, etc. There was one set of 70 cards, again holding top secret information, titled Study, with an exclamation mark. Study! There we go. Each card contained information regarding live and non-live nuclear weapons. Guys like 6 x 6, 36, okay, 8 x 8, 64, and that's a nuclear warhead. Okay, I don't know what this flashcard is. That's a nuke. Number 9, Guantanamo files. Back in April 2011, a pretty heavy leak hit the web. And no, it wasn't Spider-Man. Amazing Spider-Man 3, it wasn't any of that. And no, it wasn't Avengers 1. WikiLeaks, who I covered in part 1 of the series, they also released the Guantanamo files, and they exposed the way prisoners were treated in Guantanamo Bay. In total, there were 779 documents that got released, and in said documents, it was discovered that innocent civilians, both from Pakistan and Afghanistan, were both being held there without any charges. It's brutal, there's some shady stuff going on. The age ranges as well for these prisoners go on from very young adults to an 89-year-old. So again, many of these prisoners are being held without any charges, and they're really young and really old, being treated like crap. This is a heavy leak, and in these documents we also see the way these prisoners are treated in detail. The way information was extracted from them was horrible. It was straight up torture. Number 8, off-road vehicles. Where we're going, we don't need roads. We're living in a pretty amazing time, I guess, when it comes to space exploration and travel and stuff. We recently sent off the James Webb Space Telescope to see even more of our universe. We're getting bigger and better. We're going deeper. 2020 was also the year where UFOs were just on the news. But what happens when these two worlds collide? Figuratively speaking, of course. Just over a year ago, an astrophysicist by the name of Eric Davis, he gave this classified briefing to the Defense Department mentioning these off-world vehicles. Secret off off-world vehicles. What could he possibly mean by that? I mean the ISS, that is technically an off-world vehicle. Spaceships aren't new, you know what I mean? Well, he added the fact that these off-world vehicles were being made somewhere else as well, not just, on Earth. Like some space BMW, I don't know. Former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid is quoted in a Times article saying he believes that crashes of objects of unknown origin may have occurred, and that any recovered materials should be studied. Okay, more than fair. Eric Davis also once produced this report to try and convince the government to invest in time travel and use wormholes to achieve such a task. Yeah, this is the Christopher Nolan segment of the list. This guy knows some stuff, for sure. He actually said he studied these crashed materials, and his conclusion is that there's no way humans could have ever created it. Yeah, I don't know. Alien materials? What do you guys think? Are we hiding alien tech? I think so. Number 7. Weaponized lightning. This whole time I thought Thor worked for the Avengers. Apparently he's working for the CIA. How fun is that? Nice. Back in the late 60s, the scientist, who remains anonymous to this day, always a good sign, well, they figured out how to weaponize and bottle lightning. Can't imagine what. Thor. They were determined to weaponize lightning to create Thor, I guess. That way there was little to no evidence left over after a planned attack. The idea, as crazy as it sounds, is pretty genius. Once it got online, people read it and they're like, oh, this is a good idea. It never made it to its final stages, thankfully, but when Forbes was allowed to release these declassified CIA files, we got a better idea of what was going on in the sky at the time. The plan was to drop these extremely thin metal wires from airplanes or rockets, whatever the case, something flying high in the sky. They would drop a metal fishing line through the clouds and then send many volts of electricity down to an enemy camp or whatever. That would for sure mess up their communications if it had worked. Again, leaked ideas that never came to fruition. Number 6, spinning cube. Remember when UFO footage was being leaked in 2020? We had Senate hearings and we just didn't care. So many of these UFO documents ended up online from the 2020, alien leak, whatever that was. That was crazy. Some are too strange not to mention, evidently. Especially in a list of government secrets. So of course we're going to talk about some aliens. One of these leaked videos, I can't lie, there's some odd behavior going on here. In this video we see a spinning alien cube almost. Yeah, it was spotted over Missouri and then only a couple hours later it was seen again, but this time 700 miles away. So whatever it was, it's moving quite fast. 44-year-old Matthew Jandeka was minding his own business, hanging out on the porch, when this caught his attention. It was a sunny day and the light reflecting off the cube caught his eye. But a day earlier, another dude, 30-year-old Justin Johnson, saw the exact same thing. He saw it driving home. He saw the light and the reflections also caught his eye in the sky. At first he thought maybe it was a balloon, but the movements were too odd, Maybe it's another drone project. What do we think? Is there cube aliens now? Some geometric aliens coming down? Someone call Shia LaBeouf. We have more cubes. We have space cubes. Number 5. Always listening. I mentioned earlier in part 1 that summit where the United States originally wanted to call out China for cyber attacks, but instead Snowden ended up leaking a PowerPoint training slideshow, and now the tables were all of a sudden turned. Snowden ended up revealing himself as the spy kid on June 12th, and he said that he planned on remaining in Hong Kong until he was kicked out. But in his first press interview since coming out, he informed South China's Morning Post that the NSA was hacking Chinese and Hong Kong computers since way back in 2009. More specifically, Snowden said the NSA hacked the Chinese University of Hong Kong, aka the heart of all internet traffic in Hong Kong. That's pretty eye-opening. It's a lot of stuff. You're seeing a lot of secrets in there. But there's many who see this hack as a good thing, of course. Citizens want to know what their governments are up to. I personally would love to know if the NSA was rummaging through my chats, you know what I mean? So a poll was conducted on June 10th. Turns out 44% of Americans were on board with Snowden's outing, and 42% of Americans say that he's a bad boy. Yeah, 57% were not a fan of the NSA's actions, while 37% were on board. Number 4. Friends without benefits. Even allies of the United States aren't safe here. Thanks to Snowden, at the end of October 2013, it was leaked that the states were spying on Germany, France, and Spain. Yeah, the NSA tapped into 35 phones, not just a couple of guys this time around. They were spying on 35 world leaders, one of which was German Chancellor Angela Merkel, who called out the NSA right after finding out and said that this act of snooping was just unacceptable between friends. Yeah, she said friends, that's crazy. It's like when you show your buddy a photo on your phone and then they start swiping. You're like, hi, what are you doing? Betrayal, what are you doing? Now, as you hear this, you're thinking, well, I'm not a world leader. I don't care. What's the big deal here? What can going through my phone really do? Well, it was also reported that they were monitoring phone calls in Spain for the average folk. Yeah, just listening in, seeing what your aunt's up to. They monitored around 60 million calls in 1 month. So yeah, world leader or not, I'd be a little concerned. They're listening to your secret recipes. I hope no one's listening to my phone calls. I mean, who makes phone calls anymore, I see a phone call come in and I'm like, If it's important to leave a message, that's what I say. Even the NSA. Leave a message. Number 3, bird drones. Bird drones is not a new concept by any means, but it's fun. So fun. We gotta talk about it whenever we can. Back in the early 60s, the CIA had this secret program called Project Aquiline, where they used small drones with a low radar cross-section, a little camera almost, all that nice spy gadget stuff. They began working on this back in 1965, believe it or not, and the first prototype was a bit obvious. It was big. It weighed over 100 pounds. It was this massive eagle-looking camera, but the only way to catch it was to fly it into a net, which broke something almost every single test flight. So cut to 2022, yeah, there's probably a drone pigeon out there somewhere watching you. Olivia just did a couple lists on hidden cameras. So birds, drones, I mean, probably. Some people think pigeons aren't even real. Some people think pigeons are drones sent by the government to watch us. I don't know. I think pigeons are pigeons. They look like pigeons. They found a hidden camera in a cactus, so sleep in fear, people. Number 2. Backup files. When Glenn Greenwald kicked off this whole thing in 2013 with Snowden, it was this massive security breach, of course. Snowden was, of course, in immensely hot water, but he was also ahead of the game right from the start, before even getting caught, before even coming out. Snowden had told Greenwald that if anything crazy were to happen to him in the future, well, he'll just leak even more information. Nice, we love backup files. You got dirt? Well, I got more dirt. Everyone's dirty. If Snowden was unable to access these encrypted documents on one of his 4 laptops, then it was set up to automatically send said private documents to higher ups and keep it going, aka the people directly involved would still stay out of the picture. On top of that, Snowden reminded The Guardian that he has many more secrets to spill, specifically the NSA's surveillance systems. Yeah, this is why you make backups, people. Duly noted, Snowden. I put this backup script in another Google Doc, just in case the NSA comes around. And finally, number 1. Pine Gap. Going to the land down under for this one. Sorry, I said under. Should have said under, but I like it. Australia's fun. Pine Gap is a secret military compound built around the Cold War. It's been described as Australia's Area 51. Australia's Area 51? Area 51? I don't know. I love Australian accents, but I can't do them. I can't do it. I don't like spiders either. All we know, the secret base, this mysterious island, was revealed back in 2013 thanks to, you guessed it, Edward Snowden. This guy releases everything. We need another Snowden to come around. This guy's the OG. Turns out this island is not a resort. In fact, it's actually a satellite surveillance base that runs espionage operations. The NSA uses this facility for global interception, and they also collect internet and telephone communication records. Again, all those secret recipes that you're telling to your aunt, they're listening, they're taking it. They're like, oh, extra garlic, you bet. That makes sense. Back in the 70s, around 400 American families just happened to move to the nearby Alice Springs. Yeah, not a coincidence at all. Just that many families rolling in. Yeah, no government operations. Just, people just decided to move here. What does your husband do? Oh, he surfs the web waves. He surfs the waves. The waves, just the waves. Just that's it. Nothing to do with the web or online. Pine Gap, bring your kids and bathing suit. Have fun. Number 10, spy tools. Back in August 2016, a group named the Shadow Brokers were the talk of the town. How could you not be with a name like that? That name makes them sound like a comic book villain. The Shadow Brokers? What? But check this out. The Shadow Brokers would basically steal cyber weapons from an NSA hacking unit and then proceed to sell them online to the highest bidder. The Shadow Brokers. I can't lie, it's a pretty sick name. The intentions, however, not so rad, not so radical. These tools have been used by many countries and many schemes. China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, you name it. These cyber attacks are also no joke. Once the entire city of Baltimore was under quite the cyber attack. I swear to God, the entire city. The 2019 ransomware cyber attack, all connected to said Shadow Brokers. Yeah, whoever this mysterious group is still remains a mystery. Is it you? If so, click thumbs up on this video. Number 9, hide your bread. Putting your money in your mattress sounds a lot easier than this system, that's for sure. Way less complicated too. Back in 2016, journalists all over the world were looking into what's called the Panama Papers, a plethora of leaked documents. Now these all came from a law firm, Mossack Fonseca. The operation here was that the firm would help the super rich hide their money in these offshore tax havens. And before you ask, yes, they got caught and this whole thing was, of course, shut down. In total, there were 140 politicians from 50 countries who were all busted, including the Saudi Arabian Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and Iceland's former Prime Minister Sigmundur David Gunnlaugsson. Yeah, y'all guilty. And we found out. Just be rich. Just be rich and do the things you have to do when you're rich. Don't hide your money. Number 8, SIM cards. In February 2015, it was reported that Snowden, our good boy Edward Snowden, he provided documents that showed that the NSA and the GCHQ had all hacked into a Dutch company that is responsible for manufacturing and supplying 2 billion SIM cards per year to big names. Names like AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, you're probably paying for some of these, you name it, right? While this hack would suggest that the agencies would then now have access to billions of unique encryption keys, which could potentially allow them to bypass wireless providers and monitor both the voice and data transmissions of every user, i.e. us, the company had actually been the target of at least 2 sophisticated intrusions, and they believed that the NSA and juicy headquarters, GCHQ, were all responsible, but the company then denied that the hack was successful in gaining access to all these encryption keys. Yeah, no, just the dirty text, nothing else. We're good though. Let's just hope that's the case. I mean, honestly, I'm deleting my history anyways, just to be safe. Number 7, military dolphins. Yeah, I said military dolphins. We're gonna get weird now, I guess. Iran has plenty of nuclear capabilities, but they also have trained dolphins now too, so good game. Back in 2000, Iran bought this fleet of trained dolphins from Russia, just, Russians doing Russian things, but they were trained supposedly by the Soviet Union to attack ships, and yes, even people. We have Navy SEALs and military dolphins. This is it, behind the scenes for Aquaman 2, I guess. What's going on here? Well, recently, like 2018 recent, satellite photos revealed a Russian naval base in Syria with pens that are commonly used for holding, you guessed it, dolphins. Yep, the dolphins are back. Ooh. Russia and the US both have fleets of trained dolphins to detect mines, but now Iran's in the mix as well. Is the next world war gonna be dolphins? That would be loud. Number 6, secret iPods. Nowadays it feels like there's a new iPhone or a new iGadget every other day. Technology is evolving a little too fast, I'd say. VR? Not for me, I'm not ready. My body was not ready for that. Music is also personal. Spotify, way too personal. But have you heard of Apple's top secret iPod? Would you get one of these? I'd pre-order it, let's do it. Back in 2005, former Apple software engineer David Shayer revealed that the tech giant once partnered up with the US Department of Energy. This special iPod was designed to test radiation on the go without drawing any attention from the public. Yeah, imagine this thing in an Apple commercial. Just dancing silhouettes, having a good time, and then just one guy suspiciously in the background, like, listening to music. This was of course top secret information back in the day, but Apple secretly helping the government by putting a Geiger counter in an iPod for a spy, it's next level, that's shady. We're gonna talk about that on this list for sure. Number 5, catfish. I mentioned bird drones in part 2, so obviously I gotta mention robot android catfish. Yep, you didn't believe them, they've arrived. What are we gonna do now, folks? The general public found out about this hidden spectacle in 2020. Catfish robots, specifically one named Charlie. Yes, it has a name. It isn't like the rest of the fish in school, okay? This one's actually an undercover agent working for the CIA, so he's a different fish. This all initially happened back in the 90s when the CIA was trying to collect water samples, obviously in secret, so they would send Charlie Chaplips upstream by using wireless communications. That was their high-tech, that was their James Bond plan, believe it or not. And yes, this was high-tech stuff at the time, all hidden inside the 60-centimeter long catfish. Sometimes spy tech is cool, like a secret iPod, that's neat, we like that. This was not one of them. I don't think Charlie will make an appearance in the next Mission Impossible movie, you know what I mean? I don't think Tom Cruise is gonna send up a robotic fish. Number 4, caller ID. Back to our boy Snowden for this one, of course. He's so good, how can we not talk about him? The king of leaks, besides Sony, obviously. In 2013, it was revealed by The Guardian that, according to the documents that were leaked by Snowden, the Obama administration allowed the NSA to collect different caller information from Verizon. Yeah, this was done through what's called a business records proposition of the Patriot Act that was established under the presidency of one George W. Bush. So, this allowed the government to order Verizon to hand over caller information every single day. Yeah, all those breakups, all those prank calls, give them here. This information included things like the time, location, and the duration of your calls. The information also began being collected under the Bush administration in 2001, and they were collected from AT&T, Verizon, and Bell South. Now, of course, once these documents were leaked to the public and this information was, widely spread, US officials began trying to reassure the public that this surveillance was somehow necessary and was actually a program vital to national security. Yeah, no worries, guys. We have to do it. We're trying to help you, Help us help you by showing us your text messages. But many people, like you're probably thinking right now, thought that the spying was unnecessary and it was an invasion of their privacy. I have to agree. Number 3, more documents. I mentioned earlier those offshore accounts for those higher-ups, those big bad boys. Well, a year later, after that 2016 scandal, even more documents were exposed. All the docs, all around the clock. Docs around the clock. Didn't even script that, that's how good I am. Docs around the clock, we can franchise that. Meaning, even more secrets, even more names. Spill the tea, who is it this time? Well, amongst the 13 million documents, we saw Nike and Apple. Yeah, they're shady. Who knew? They had around $250 billion hidden in offshore accounts. On top of that, there were financial connections to the literal Queen of England and Justin Trudeau. Yeah, our Canadian lad. We got mad at him a lot for going to his cottage the last few years. Meanwhile, we forgot he's in some offshore accounts. There you go, some more juice to get mad at him about. Number 2, Project Dishfire. This one sounds calming. Project Dishfire. Sounds like the best detergent you can get. It was reported by The Guardian that the NSA collects 200 million text messages a day from around the world. Yeah, I'm just exposing all of your secret texts for this one. I was really coming for you. I bet half of these texts literally just say, "You up?" The government's like, damn it, we'll try again tomorrow. They would then use these messages to pull the details of its user. You know, location, time, contact information, and credit card details. Stuff you don't want out there to anybody, especially people wearing dress shirts. Ugh, the worst. It was also reported that the NSA also provided British intelligence agencies with all of that data, just without the actual context of the text messages, that's comforting. Basically, they have all this data, and at any point they could extract anything they wanted, like older purchases, past travel plans, past financial transactions, all your contacts, regardless of whether or not you're being investigated for anything at all, just because they feel like it. Yes, this sounds illegal, unethical, and quite shady, and it really was. All this happened right before former President Barack Obama gave a speech about proposed policy changes in response to the Snowden leak, so the timing couldn't be more crucial. And finally, number 1, VX gas. The government using gas to take out targets. What is this, Mission Impossible? This is scary. I won't be able to sleep after this. What am I writing? VX gas is tasteless and it's odorless. It can take you out just by skin contact alone. The nerve agent VX is of course extremely illegal as well, obviously. It came from ICIS research from the early 50s when developing new insecticides. And it worked a little too well, I'd say, and it was swiftly and thankfully outlawed. But the bell can't be unrung now, can it be? This was the same nerve gas that was used to take out Kim Jong-nam back in 2017. That was a new revelation we discovered. We're like, oh, it was this gas. That's terrifying. Yeah, he was attacked at an airport. 2 people rubbed a cloth on his face, that's all it took. It was covered in VX, and then he died on the way to the hospital. He had a seizure. How scary is that? Initially, officials thought cyanide was used here, but in reality, it was only 10 milligrams of VX. So far, that's the only confirmed case of VX being used to take somebody out. Again, the only one we know so far, so sleep in fear, that's all I'm saying. Kicking off the list at number 10, nuclear site list. Here on Most Amazing, we love lists. I'm not sure if you can tell, but apparently the US government also fancies a list or two. Back when Obama was still running the show, a report was delivered to Congress. Well, it was supposed to be. The 266-page report featured every nook and cranny about the US nuclear program, and it was released publicly on the government printing office's website in draft form by accident. Yeah, just a casual PDF that shows us literal maps to stockpiled fuel used for nuclear warheads back in the day. We love those. The only PDFs I actually enjoy are those ones, actually. Does this stuff happen often? How does this happen? I thought this type of stuff could never happen, right? Well, MIT professor John M. Deutsch said these screw-ups do happen, and it doesn't look like a serious breach. I mean, it certainly sounds serious, but okay, we'll trust the government. Thank you, sir. Let's do it. Number 9, ClimateGate. Yeah, we had a smooth one off the bat, now we're getting right into the serious stuff. Climate stuff. Climate change and stuff. A little different sounding than Watergate, but we'll get to that one later on, obviously. ClimateGate, this was back in 2009 when some hackers released thousands of emails and files, all from the Climate Research Unit in the UK. These documents, okay, hold on to your butts for this one, they show scientists suppressing the publication of research going against global warming. So this sparked a bunch of bad ideas because at that point in 2009, we just believed it. We just stopped listening at all. Climate change critics were like, aha, I knew it. It was all a conspiracy this whole time. The CRU responded and said the emails were out of context and that the planet is indeed heating up, and we're still in fact burning towards our demise. But these docs leaked literally weeks before the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Denmark, so peculiar timing, I'd say. Science fired back pretty quick. Scientists all around the world were actively proving at that point that humans actively are causing global warming. Today we're scrambling a bit more to figure this one out than 2009. Yeah, a few more of you believe this time around. Number 8, God save the Queen. This one's quite grim, but I have to talk about it. Have you ever wondered what will happen after the Queen passes away? I mean, I know it's the last thing we want to think about right now because dark, obviously, but it's hard not to think of, especially when Politico magazine releases Operation London Bridge to the public. Yeah, what is that? This magazine somehow got documents showing each and every step in detail what'll happen when that fateful day arrives. There'll be phone calls to the Prime Minister, of course, would be first. Customs require that the Prime Minister is informed by the monarch's private security. Flags will fly at half-mast, of course, but oddly enough, in this document, the Queen's death is referred to as D-Day. Yeah, 9 days of protocols will follow afterwards, and after a service at St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle, that's when Queen Elizabeth will be buried with King George VI. It's dark, but I mean, imagine reading about this one morning in 2021. What an odd article. What a brutal way to wake up. Number 7, secret PowerPoint. Nothing sounds less cool than a leaked 41-slide PowerPoint presentation, but I'll do my best. Here we go. When it comes to the NSA, odds are this PowerPoint is going to be pretty juicy, right? This slideshow was often used to train US intelligence, and I gotta say, 41 pages? That's it. I did 45 on medieval knights in high school. That's all I'm saying, step your game up. This program was called PRISM. You probably heard about this. This is a big deal. And it cost about $20 million a year. This was the highlight of the Snowden leak. PRISM kicked off back in 2007. See, originally they partnered with Microsoft, but once they were attached to Apple come 2012, that's when things got a little dicey, as most things are with Apple. The PowerPoint confirmed that the NSA has access to servers belonging to massive tech giants. Google, Skype, YouTube even, so I don't know, search history, you may want to delete that stuff. There was a summit in California which originally was tense. The United States was accusing China of cyber attack, but right after Edward Snowden leaked the PRISM tea, they didn't have much power at said summit. So China and Europe citizens were obviously not too pleased here. Yeah, leaked data, we don't like hearing about that. This one gets a little worse. Number 6, Big Brother is watching. Even allies of the United States are not safe here, okay? Thanks to Snowden, our boy again, gotta mention him a couple times in this list. At the end of October 2013, it was leaked that the states were spying on Germany, France, and Spain. It's a lot of people, it's a lot of eyes, a lot of spies. The NSA had tapped into 35 phones, not just a couple of dudes. They were spying on 35 world leaders, one of which was German Chancellor Angela Merkel, who called out the NSA after finding out and said this act of snooping was just unacceptable between friends. Ah, brutal. She said the F word too. It's like, hey, we were friends, pal. Don't go through my phone. Don't swipe left in the photos, okay? Betrayal. Well, it was also reported that the NSA was monitoring regular phone calls in Spain for the average folks. So if you thought you were off the hook, you're not, literally and figuratively. They monitored about 60 million calls in 1 month. So yeah, world leader or not, be a little concerned about these guys. Maybe. You know, save some tea for in person. You don't want to give up all that good stuff on the phone. Number 5, leaked voters. Back in December 2015, personal information from 191 million voters was leaked to the public online. Yeah, this feels like yesterday. I remember this all unfolding. I was like, what? How? Researcher Chris Vickery found this data while conducting a security investigation. See, Forbes had described Vickery as, dare I say, a good hacker. They're what's referred to as these white hat hackers. They find weak spots in security without sabotaging or exploding them, you know? Unlike Snowden or other people. That's the key, that's the Donnie difference. 79% of those eligible to vote were the victims here, so it was a big one. All their names, addresses, birth dates, phone numbers, emails, you name it, things you don't want other people knowing, let alone third parties, were all out there. If you could vote, you were exposed. We're still unsure who was behind this entire leak. CSO Online and databreaches.net suggest that the information more than likely came from software provider Nation Builder, but CEO Jim Gilliam announced that that was not the case and they did not create the database. Although he conceded that it is possible that some of the information that it contains may have come from the data we make available for free to campaigns. He's like, no, we didn't do it, but maybe we did. It's like, okay. So a third party took what they could and really ran with it. That's terrifying. Time to change your email. Again. Number 4, psychoelectronic weapons. Yeah, this sounds like something Iron Man uses. It doesn't sound too chill now, does it? Psychoelectronic weapons. The first time Curtis Waltman heard of these was by accident, as you could have guessed. He was receiving documents via Yahoo and they were not what he expected. See, originally he had filed a Freedom of Information Act request to Washington State Fusion Center. See, he was trying to find out more on the clashes between Antifa and the far right, but he got a response and it was all about experimental weapons. Guy gets a zip file back in return called EM Effects on Human Body. He's like, Big Shiny Tune 6? He's like, what? I didn't ask for this. Way too many viruses in that one. Big Shiny Tune 7, I think was the good one. That's the good one. In this document, he saw diagrams on these weapons and the effects that they have on people. There's muscle quaking, all body pain. One of the effects allowed users to control their dreams. Is this a weapon? This is pretty remarkable. This was clearly sent by mistake. The only emails I get are student loans, and those ones are not by mistake. Those ones are definitely on purpose. They're like Mr. Taylor. I'm like, oh god, they found me. Number 3, quantum computer. This next one's pretty eye-opening. Here we go. Computers are getting more and more advanced by the day. Deepfakes are also getting way too good. I've fallen for way too many fake trailers. I thought they were doing a Back to the Future reboot with Tom Holland and Robert Downey Jr. for like 4 days. All fake. Whole thing's fake. But thanks to our man Snowden, the OG secret revealer, it was reported in the Washington Post on January 2nd, 2014 that the NSA is working hard at creating their own computer. Yeah, how fun must that one be? I wonder if it can run Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 without getting hot. No computer can do that. It's called the quantum computer, and it costs about $80 million to create this program. This computer is safely stored in a massive room-sized metal box, not intimidating at all. It's part of a program called Penetrating Hard Targets. So it can break encryptions for just about anything. Finance records, medical, your old MSN, hopefully, maybe, probably, definitely not. What a nightmare that would be. The NSA is well on their way to breaking every form of public encryption. This quantum computer can theoretically break through any RSA encryption, which for the average computer today, that takes years. This supercomputer they're working on can break through a lot faster. We can get through in days, even hours. So you better clear that search history now while you still can. Thanks for the hot tips, Snowden. I was gonna switch to PC gaming, but you know what? I'll wait it out. I'll wait till this new one comes out. It looks a little faster. Number 2, WikiLeaks war logs. Companies have to be somewhere, right? We're in a film studio in Toronto. We go to a certain place. We leave said certain place in a said certain area. Right? Where do places like WikiLeaks live? How do they stay secure? Well, in Stockholm, apparently, buried under 100 feet below street level in an old nuclear bunker. That's where. Right next to Pirate Bay. They're neighbors, actually. They knock on the cement walls. Today, it's a facility owned by Swedish internet provider Bahnhof. Now, this is where they keep servers for WikiLeaks, but Julian Assange, frontrunner of this whole operation, his hard drive is in this bunker, behind a 2-foot steel door, accompanied by numerous backup generators, so he's secure. In October 2010, WikiLeaks actually published Army field reports from 2004 to 2009. Now, it's one of the biggest leaks in US history. This report confirmed that there were over 66,000 civilian deaths in the Iraq war logs out of the 109,000 confirmed in total. That's horrible. This leak also suggested that some American troops were classifying civilians as enemies in their statistics afterwards. These numbers were from 2004 to 2009. One of the biggest leaks in US history, no doubt about it. And finally, number 1, Watergate. Yeah, it's not an internet leak, but it's too good to talk about. This is OG, come on. We have to finish on Watergate. In the middle of 1972, there were 5 men who were all arrested for breaking into the Democratic National Committee headquarters at the Watergate Hotel in Washington, D.C. Now, it was pretty obvious they intended on bugging the place. They looked like spy kids. They had all the gears. They were, it was fishy. As the year went on, the election came closer and closer, and then all of a sudden, out of the woodwork comes this anonymous source who fed information to Washington Post reporters that apparently the Watergate bugging incident was a massive campaign of political spying and sabotage kicked off by none other than President Nixon himself. Yeah, he was trying to get that re-election. Now, despite this information leak and it being reported in the news and all that good stuff, Nixon was still re-elected, even though he was involved in this entire scandal. These men were clearly linked to a fundraising group for Nixon, but his administration just kept denying any involvement. It wasn't until a year later in 1972 when reporters Carl Bernstein and Bob Woodward, they also came forward and exposed more stuff. Yeah, they exposed the administration's role in this entire scandal, and they had an inside source, an FBI agent named Mark Feltz, and this ultimately led to Nixon resigning later in 1974, the first president to do so.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have SIM cards. We see all the time in movies and shows when people are trying to be super secret, they smash their phone and their SIM card, but as it turns out, maybe we should all be smashing our SIM cards, super secret lifestyle or not. In February of 2015, it was reported that Snowden provided documents that showed that the NSA and GCHQ had hacked into a Dutch company that is responsible for manufacturing and supplying 2 billion SIM cards per year, and they supply places like AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, and a variety of other providers. While this hack would suggest that the agencies would then now have access to billions of unique encryption keys, which could potentially allow them to bypass wireless providers and monitor both voice and data transmissions of every user that has a SIM card made by this company. The company did reply to the situation and said that they had been the target of at least 2, quote, particularly sophisticated intrusions, and they suggested that they believed that the NSA NSA and the GCHQ were responsible, but the company then denied that the hack was successful in gaining access to those encryption keys.
Number 9. Quantum computer. This next one is eye-opening, to say the least. Computers are getting more and more advanced by the day. Deepfakes are going to ruin my life. They're getting really good at those. I feel like an old man every time I see those and fall for it. But thanks to our man Snowden, it was reported in the Washington Post on January 2nd, 2014, that the NSA is working hard at creating their own computer. How fun must that be? It's called the quantum computer, and it cost about $80 million to create. And no, it can't send you back in time. This computer is safely stored in a massive room-sized metal box, which is not intimidating at all, and it's part of a program called Penetrating Hard Targets. I want to make so many jokes, but I won't. So it can break encryptions for just about anything. Finance records, medical, your old MSN, probably. What a nightmare that would be. The NSA is well on their way to breaking every form of public encryption. This quantum computer can theoretically break through any RSA encryption, which for the average computer today, that takes, I don't know, years, but this supercomputer can break through a lot faster. I'm talking days. Just don't go in my MSN, please.
In our number 8 spot today, we have Project Dishfire. It was reported by The Guardian that it had been revealed that the NSA collects 200 million text messages a day from around the world. They then use these messages to pull the details of certain location information, contact networks, and the credit card details of different mobile users. It was also reported that the NSA also provided British intelligence agencies with all of the data, just without the actual context of the text messages. So the NSA has all your secrets and nudies, but at least they didn't share them? I don't know. Basically, they have all of this data and at any point could potentially extract certain information like past travel plans, your financial transactions, your contacts, regardless of whether or not you were being investigated for something. Yes, this sounds illegal, unethical, and a little shady, and this revelation all came before former President Barack Obama gave a speech about proposed policy changes in reaction to the whistleblowing that was going on around Snowden and the NSA.
Number 7. Friends without benefits. Even allies of the United States are not safe here. Thanks to Snowden, at the end of October 2013, it was leaked that the states were spying on Germany, France, and Spain. The NSA had tapped into 35 phones, which, by the way, not just a couple of random dudes, they were spying on 35 world leaders. One of which was German Chancellor Angela Merkel, who called out the NSA after finding out, of course, and said this act of snooping was just unacceptable between friends. Really went personal with the friends comment there. It's like when you show somebody a photo on your phone and they start swiping, like, hi, hello, betrayal, see ya. Now, as you hear this, you're thinking, well, I'm not a world leader, what's the big deal here? Well, it was also reported that the NSA was monitoring phone calls in Spain for the average folk. They monitored about 60 million calls in 1 month, so yeah, world leader or not, be a little concerned about these guys. Maybe.
In our number 6 spot today, we have the Brazil spying scandal. It was reported by The Guardian that Brazil was second only to the United States in terms of the amount of communications that were being subjected to surveillance by the NSA. This means that the NSA were seriously spying on millions of Brazilians, including the emails and phone calls of their president. At the G20 summit that year, which took place in Russia, Brazil's president at the time, Dilma Rousseff, had a one-on-one meeting with Obama in reference to this. He said that he would look into it and get back to her, but before he could, more NSA tea was spilled, and it was revealed that the agency had also targeted Petrobras, which is Brazil's state oil company. This led the president to call this new information industrial espionage, and as a result, she called off her scheduled visit to the White House and demanded answers. The called off visit was important because it was to be the first state visit by a Brazilian president in about 2 decades, and although the Obama administration claimed that it was a joint decision made by both presidents, some media outlets described it as the sternest punishment that had been received at that time in response to all of these NSA leaks. This also led Brazil to take a multitude of steps to hopefully get away from the American-run internet.
Number 5. Backup. When Glenn Greenwald kicked this whole thing off in 2013 with Snowden and his reveals, it was this massive security breach, obviously. Snowden was of course in hot water immediately, but he was ahead of the game from the start. See, Snowden had told Greenwald that if anything crazy happens to him, well, he'll just leak even more information. If Snowden was unable to access these encrypted documents on one of his 4 laptops, then it was set up to automatically send those private documents to higher ups, aka the people directly involved in the leak. On top of that, Snowden reminded The Guardian that he has many more secrets to spill, specifically the NSA's surveillance systems. This is why you make backups. Duly noted, Snowden.
In our number 4 spot today, we have the embassy catastrophe. There was a document from 2007 that was leaked which named 38 different embassies and missions that were so-called targets of US surveillance. This document didn't quite make it clear whether or not these targets were being looked into by only the NSA or if the CIA and FBI were also involved. The document described certain things like bugging fax machines with devices that allowed them to listen in on conversation, and the document also listed the names of different programs that are used within the embassies. The document showed that the embassies targeted weren't just those of countries who seemed to be enemies with the United States, and instead included places like India and Mexico, Greece, and Turkey. It appears as if the goal was to gain insider information into the diplomatic relations between the targets and the United States. The EU embassy in Washington, D.C. was one of the targets on this document, and this leak had the potential to have jeopardized one of the largest attempted free trade agreements in the world, because shortly after this all came out, negotiations were set to begin between the EU and the United States. The French president at the time made his anger about the situation very public and stated that all future negotiations will only be made under the agreement that the United States cease all unauthorized surveillance of any EU buildings or personnel.
Number 3. China. I mentioned earlier that summit where the United States originally wanted to call out China for cyber attacks, but instead Snowden leaked a PowerPoint training slideshow and the tables were turned just like that. Snowden revealed himself as this massive spy kid on June 12th, and he said he was planning on remaining in Hong Kong until he was kicked out. But in his first press interview since coming out with all this information, he informed South China's Morning Post that the NSA was hacking Chinese and Hong Kong computers since back in 2009. That's a long time ago. It's like when Avatar 1 came out. That's how long ago that was. More specifically, Snowden said that the NSA hacked the Chinese University of Hong Kong, aka the heart of all internet traffic in Hong Kong. Now, of course, this is eye-opening, but there's many who see this hack attack as a good thing. See, citizens want to know what their government's up to, and honestly, I myself would love to know if the NSA was rummaging through my chats. So a poll was conducted on June 10th and 11, and apparently 44% of Americans were on board with Snowden's outing. They were with him, and 42% of Americans say that he's a bad boy. 57% were not a fan of the NSA's action, while 37% were on board. 30% of folks liked the fact that they were being spied on. That's some weird kind of kink, I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you want the NSA in your Dropbox? Let us know in the comments your thoughts below. We'd love to hear from you.
In our number 2 spot today, we have caller information. In 2013, it was reported by The Guardian that, according to the documents that were leaked by Snowden, the Obama administration has allowed the NSA to collect different caller information from Verizon. This was done through what was called a quote business records provision of the Patriot Act that was established under the presidency of George W. Bush. It allowed the government to order Verizon to hand over caller information every single day. The information included things like the time, location, and duration of the call. The information began being collected under the Bush administration in 2001, and they were collected from AT&T, Verizon, and Bell South. Of course, once these documents were leaked and the information became public knowledge, US officials began trying to reassure the public that this surveillance was somehow necessary and was actually a program vital to national security, but many people rightfully felt like the spying was an unnecessary invasion of their privacy. This one is tricky because there certainly is a fine line with these things.
And finally, number 1. PowerPoint. Nothing sounds less cool than a leaked 41-slide PowerPoint presentation, but when it comes to the NSA, odds are it's going to be a little juicy. This slideshow is used to train US intelligence, and I gotta say, 41 pages? That's it? I did 45 on Medieval Knights in high school. Step your game up. This program called Prism cost about $20 million a year, and it was the highlight of this leak. Prism kicked off back in 2007. Originally, they partnered with Microsoft, but once they were attached to Apple, come 2012, well, that's when things got a little bit fishy, as most things are with Apple, specifically their maps. That was horrible. The PowerPoint confirmed that the NSA has access to servers belonging to massive tech giants like Google, Skype, or even YouTube. Yeah, right here, they're listening right now. So your search history, emails, anything that rolls through those, usernames, passwords, well, they've got them. Even Skaterboy69 at Hotmail, odds are they're already looking. You're done. You're canceled, Brad. There was a summit in California which originally was tense. The United States were accusing China of cyber attacks, but right after Edward leaked this Prism tea, they didn't have much power at that summit. China and Europe's citizens weren't too pleased here, and honestly, yeah, it's a botched meeting. I can understand why.
In our number 10 spot, we have Ulysses S. Grant. Apparently, Ulysses is known for being a bit of a badass in his time, but also, what you may not know is that he was actually a bit of a scaredy cat. How relatable. Same, Ulysses. Me too. But honestly, no wonder the government kept that a secret, because if the public knew that he dealt with being afraid of a lot of things, it wouldn't have reassured them that they had a strong, fearless leader running their country. Apparently, he had so many fears, including not being able to look at a single drop of blood. I hope he never had to go to war. Poor guy. Honestly, I feel fate when I see blood too, so I feel very understood right now. In our number 9 spot, we have secret affairs. It is no secret that JFK had an affair with Marilyn Monroe, and Bill Clinton allegedly had his affair, but honestly, let's not be so naive as to think that they are the only ones. Apparently, Lyndon Johnson was allegedly known to be quite the ladies' man within the Oval Office, and for decades there have been rumors of presidents that were also in the closet about their sexuality. But still, most of that is, hush hush, probably because of all the press and attention that would arise if such things were revealed, so makes sense. Also, the more people know about you personally, the more you become vulnerable to judgment and possible dislike, and so remaining somewhat of a mystery in order to control how the public sees you is definitely in every president's best interest. In our number 8 spot, we have President John Quincy Adams. Look, if the presidents become old and incapable of working, or if they turned out to be a little mentally unstable, you're probably not going to know about it. Why? Because in the government's eyes, the less you know, the better. The presidents are just one person, and they probably aren't the only ones that make the decisions, and so from the government's perspective, if you're able to be kept out of the loop, then that's just what they're going to do. Perhaps not right, but what can we do? Which is why it is not surprising to find out that President John Quincy Adams, the US's 6th president, had possibly gone a little crazy while he was in office. Apparently, he believed that the world was hollow, and even helped fund a program that would help drill a hole into the ground to try to contact the mole people and begin trading negotiations. Even in the 1800s, this was known to be a hoax, so no wonder they covered this one up. In our number 7 spot, we have George Washington. As great as he was for the American people, apparently one thing that he kinda sucked at was war. Apparently he was not a good military commander, and when it came to strategy, he lost every major battle that he fought. Apparently once, when he was supposed to capture a French fort, his men accidentally open-fired on a British unit. Oops. His poor commander skills would have probably hindered the public's perception on how he was an exceptional leader, so it was probably best that the public didn't know about this. It makes sense as to why the government protected this secret. He ended up being what some think to be one of the greatest presidents, so that was probably a good decision. In our number 6 spot, we have political clubs. Look, it's no secret that so many presidents and political figures have been tied to clubs and cults and groups, and they have been accused of some pretty unfathomable things. But does that mean every president and political figure is a part of them? Of course not. Regardless, there's no proof, and we can only speculate based on evidence we have, and the evidence is limited. There are pictures, though, of some of the past presidents being a part of specific clubs, such as President Ronald Reagan and Richard Nixon on Robbins Island, where there was believed to be a cult-like club on that island at the time. But who knows? That's kind of purely speculation. Regardless, we know that the government will continue to protect these specific clubs and their secrets, and nothing will change in that respect anytime soon. Coming up in our number 5 spot, we have President Roosevelt's secret. This one is purely speculation, but would be insane if it was proven to be true. The story of the attack on Pearl Harbor is known around the world because of how horrendous it was. We have all been told the story of the attack being completely unexpected and the country being blindsided. But there is some speculation as to whether that's the whole story or not. Word on the street is that allegedly President Roosevelt actually cut off off trade to Japan, and people say that he allegedly told other countries to not trade with Japan, leaving Japan in a state of panic. The attack was supposedly a response to this decision, and therefore it wouldn't be entirely unexpected if it were proven to be true. Now, America was at war, and the Japanese were technically on the opponent's side, so that decision was probably an attempt to get Japan to change positions. But in any case, crazy stuff if it were true. In our number 4 spot, we have TV programs are. Allegedly, the initial reason why TV programs were created was with the purpose to be able to program the masses and control the narrative around the war and what was happening in the world. Experiments such as people being shown a train coming at them and the conclusion of their reaction to run away and think it to be real showed the power of imagery and how it can influence our emotions, how it can create real fear. The government knows this, and the government and presidents use this to their advantage, especially the presidents that have the media on their side. Ever wonder why everyone is super uneasy during election time and filled with fear and chaos, and then all of a sudden when the election is done, it all goes away? Make up whatever opinion you like on this, but it is fascinating to observe, and it is almost laughable that we went about calling TV shows TV programs for so long without even realizing what we were saying, but they knew. In our number 3 spot, we have Thomas Jefferson's stage fright. This isn't so much terrifying as it was seemingly terrifying for Jefferson to experience, but apparently Thomas Jefferson was actually allegedly a horrible public speaker and was terrified of it. People believe that perhaps he just had a stuttering problem, but apparently that is the reason as to why throughout his presidency he only gave 2 speeches in total. Lordy, that is quite a secret. I truly wonder how they kept that one a secret. Well, anyways, regardless, he was known for being brilliant and is known for making great improvements to the American society, but who knows? Maybe if that was common knowledge, the public may have been hard on him for it and he might not have done as good of a job. So maybe it's best that we didn't know. In our number 2 spot, we have restricted areas. Okay, this is another obvious one because obviously the governments of the countries of the world are protecting all of the restricted areas in their countries, including the secret presidential hideaways which we know exist. But in any case, there are restricted areas around the world such as secret bunkers for the presidents, but also a whole town called Mercury in Nevada, Area 51 in Nevada, North Base Secret Base in Canada, Menwith Hill Royal Air Force Station in the UK that's leased to the US. So many restricted areas around the world with secrets that I'm sure we can't even imagine. The potential things that lie within these secret places is hard to imagine. I bet you there is just so many things that would blow our minds, and I'm not just talking about secret presidential affairs that I'm sure happen. We're talking aliens, obviously. Coming up at our number 1 spot, we have the Presidential Book of Secrets. Allegedly, there is a book of secrets that has been passed down from US president to US president over the years, and it was revealed in the popular movie National Treasure, one of my personal favorites, not gonna lie. This is a book that is allegedly hidden in the library at the White House, and only the librarian knows of its location, in case, something happens to the president. President Obama hinted at this book being real on a talk show interview once. Some speculate that it was complete sarcasm, but on another occasion, he did say that Donald Trump would learn a series of deep secrets when he got into the office, so that's suspicious. Regardless, if it was real, he's not about to reveal that to us because it's a secret. Duh.
Coming in number 10, we have the Empire State Building 103rd floor viewing room. I mean, if you want to see the whole New York skyline and you don't want to break the bank on your trip to the top of the Empire State Building, and you want to grab a drink, you better believe that there's a hotel called The Standard that has all of those things. But for those of you who really want to head to the top of New York and can't do it without popping into the iconic Empire State Building, then I'll have you know that you're not even getting the best view. You spent all that money to go to the top of the Empire State Building only to find out that there is a secret room that you are not qualified to check out. There happens to be a 103rd floor that you can't get to. This helps the rich and famous see the whole city without tourist crowds. Now I'm sorry, but just going to the front desk and asking if you can get there isn't enough. You actually have to be someone of status. Unless you're very rich, very famous, or a government official, you are not going anywhere near the 103rd floor. I'm sorry, but you're just not important enough. The government and the people who run the building don't want you going up to that floor because it's going to lose its attraction. I'm sorry, but you're going to be stuck on the 102nd floor, looking up, wondering which important people are hovering above you. Coming Coming in at number 9, we have the Mount Rushmore Vault. Now this next one is going to sound like it was pulled out of a comic book, but I will let you know that it is 100% real. Behind Abraham Lincoln's head on Mount Rushmore is a secret tunnel that leads to a massive room that is full of US documents. Like, come on. I remember Team America World Police, they had a secret base in Mount Rushmore, but this couldn't be the truth. But would I lie to you? This was actually the original vision of the man who built Mount Rushmore. And can I just say for a moment that this is probably the most patriotic thing that anyone has ever done? I mean, you could put a flag in your front yard, but that is nothing compared to the amount of work that went into building faces of some of the most famous presidents in America into the side of a mountain. But inside this vault are some government documents. Now, what's on those documents, no one really knows. It could be anything. They could be extremely valuable. It could be the Declaration of Independence, or it could be just a bunch of boring files that don't really mean anything. And you are not going to get invited into this vault unless you have some sort of government power. Coming in at number 8, we have the Lehman Brothers secret Times Square building. When you look at all of the massive buildings in Times Square, you probably think that rent must be super high to have a spot in one of those buildings. Well, you would be right, but there is something that is even more valuable than renting the space. It's ads. If every building in Times Square is covered in ads because companies will pay out the butt to have all their stuff promoted up there. And the Lehman Brothers saw this as an opportunity and decided that was all they needed for their building. One of the centerfold buildings in Times Square is owned by the Lehman Brothers, and there is nothing in it. If you were to walk around inside this building, you would literally just have open spaces and dangling wires. The whole thing just acts as a massive billboard, and it's probably very profitable because they don't need to worry about any building upkeep. Coming in at number 7, we have Niihau, Hawaii. How big could a secret room be? Well, how about 70 square miles? Well, this one isn't so much a room, but it is very much an island, and it is definitely a secret that the government is trying to keep secret from everyone. This place is closed off to visitors. It is a self-sufficient island that only has 130 people living on it, and although the people are allowed to leave, no one is allowed to enter outside of medical services. There are some very strict rules on this island. For one, there is no booze. Just so you know, you wouldn't be able to sneak on the island and have a big party. The people there aren't really into that. Also, there are no guns, which is probably a good thing, but again, it brings down how much excitement there will be at any given time. And this place has chosen a way of life that is very different from our own. They don't have any plumbing, they have no traditional roads, and everything in terms of food is taken from the land by farmers and brought to the people. They do have electricity, however. All of that comes from solar panels, but they do not have internet. So you're going to have to get very good at talking to people. What a scary thought. Coming in at number 6, we have the Eiffel Tower apartment. If you go to Paris, you can now see what would be the most expensive apartment in the whole city, and that is the Eiffel Tower apartment. The man who built the Eiffel Tower didn't only do it so he could have his masterpiece be the center of attention. No, he wanted to have the best apartment maybe in the world. At the top of the Eiffel Tower is an apartment that only could be accessed by one man who built the Eiffel Tower himself, Gustave Eiffel. Now, people can go visit, but that isn't even the most secret part of this secret room. There's also something that is underneath one of the legs of the Eiffel Tower, and that is a military bunker that can prep troops in the heart of the city without the enemy catching on. Could you imagine a bunch of French troops popping out of the base of the Eiffel Tower? You have to admit, the French have a way with theatrics. Coming in at number 5, we have Club 33. Here's something that the super rich and the government want to keep hidden from you, and even with me telling you about it, there's a good chance that you still won't be able to afford the entrance fee. See, Club 33 is something that is hidden away in Disney World. We all know that Disney World is a place where kids come to have their dreams come true, but the kids aren't roaming around free. They're running around with their parents, who, after a long day in the sun taking care of Rugrats, probably want a drink. Turns out, you can't get booze when you're at Disney World, but you can if you're part of Club 33. This is a members-only club that is somewhat a high rollers lounge. Only the best of the best can join. You need a recommendation to get in, and on top of that, if you can get accepted, you have to pay a $25,000 membership fee and then $12,000 annually each year after that. It's very much a status symbol. Some suspect that Club 33 has something to do with Jesus or the devil, since we all know that number 33 has strong religious connotations. I don't know if that's true, but if you're blowing your money at Disney World in that amount, you're probably in the Illuminati. Coming in number 4, we have the secret train station under Waldorf Astoria. In movies, high-ranking government officials always have some sort of secret underground transportation that they can use to get around, and some of you think that that couldn't be a real thing in real life. There's no way that something like that could exist. Well, think again. Under one of the most famous hotels in New York, a hotel known as the Waldorf Astoria, there is a train station that is only used by the president himself. This is partly because almost every president has stayed there ever since its inception, but it's also one of the most secure ways for the president to travel. No one can get down there, and even if they did, there is a ton of secret features that the rail car has. For all we know, this thing could be built like a Bond car and have heat-seeking missiles that come through the headlights. Coming at number 3, we have Room 39. This is one of the most secret places in North Korea, which is already a very secretive place. No one really knows what goes on in Room 39, but people suspect that government workers work in there to try and create revenue for North Korea through illegal activity. Thought that they could be cooking and organizing the distribution of crystal meth, and they are also finding ways to commit billions of dollars in insurance fraud. That is wild. Coming in number 2, we have the Vatican bunker. Now, this isn't a place where the Pope can go to hide out if the world starts to end because he was right about Armageddon. I mean, they probably have a room like that, but it won't be as exciting as the one I'm about to tell you about. The Vatican bunker is a place where they keep all the files that have been held in the Vatican for centuries. We're talking about 1,200 years of paperwork. I mean, I think you could fit most of that stuff onto a hard drive, so I don't know why they're still doing the whole pen and paper thing, but to each their own. But the Vatican archives have all of the juicy details about everything the church has done for a long time. You better believe that all of this information is closed to the public. In fact, if you ever get access to this secret bunker, you have to be a high-ranking scholar, and you can only look through certain folders. The Pope will vet everything that an outsider has access to before they are allowed into the bunker. And there is a hard cutoff. Anything that is younger than 75 years old, there is zero access to. That is a hard and fast rule that only the Pope can break. And even with probably the most accepting Pope of all time, he isn't about to let any of this information slip. But there is a lot of people who want to get their hands on those files with all the problems the church has been getting into in recent years. I can't go into details on this channel because it's disturbing, but either you know what I'm talking about or you're going to go look it up right now. And coming in at the number 1 spot is Area 51. Come on, this has to be number 1. What is going on in Area 51? Now, is this a room? Well, kinda. It's an indoor facility, so there is a room in there somewhere, I'm sure. But the whole thing has to be the biggest place that the government is hiding from us. And what is going on in there? We have no idea. I think we could all say aliens. That's probably what we're all thinking. But there could be some tech that will change the world. They could have mech suits in there that are like the ones from Pacific Rim. Just let us in already and we'll stop messing around with the stock market. I promise.